Kabul is on the edge once again. With this visual on your screens, you can see how and why a powerful blast rocked a hotel restaurant in the heart of Afghanistan's capital. You can see by this visual that the bombing was extremely sudden and came out of nowhere, killing 7 people, including a Chinese national, and injuring several others. But this was not a random attack. ISIS has claimed responsibility for it, and for the first time, the terror group has openly linked the attack to China's treatment of the Uyghur Muslims. So why is China suddenly in ISIS's crosshairs? Why are Chinese-run hotels and business becoming prime targets in Afghanistan? Let's break it down. Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Dive brought to you by NewsX. I'm Asavri Jindal, and today we will break down the blast. The Chinese restaurant situated in Shah-e-No area of Kabul used to be a bustling place, a hub for lovers of Chinese food. It used to be a small yet packed restaurant, and it's now left in rubbles. You can see the difference in the picture on your screens. On the left is a picture from before the blast, and on the right is the restaurant, or rather what's left of it after the blast. The attack occurred in Shahar-e-No neighborhood of Kabul, a commercial district long considered one of Afghan's capital's safest areas. There are many places that are along this commercial road. For example, there is a Kabul city center, which is a shopping mall, a Shahar-e-No park, which is the largest public park in the area, as well as many embassy offices. The road also has multiple banks, of course, hotels and other commercial buildings and supermarkets as well. This was not just any restaurant. This was a Chinese-run establishment operating openly in the heart of Kabul. The restaurant was located inside a hotel and was co-owned by Chinese Muslim nationals, his wife, and an Afghan business partner named Abdul Jabbar Mahmood. This was a place frequented by Chinese nationals living or working in Afghanistan, local Afghans, and members of the Muslim community. It was not a diplomatic site. It was not a military target. It was a civilian business symbolizing China's growing footprint in Taliban-ruled Afghanistan. The hotel was clearly Chinese-owned, accessible, and in a public, crowded area. Authorities have confirmed that at least 7 people were killed in the blast. Among the deceased was a Chinese national identified as Ayub, along with 6 Afghan citizens. Several others were wounded, including 4 women and a child. The humanitarian organization Emergency, which operates a surgical center close to the blast site, said it received 20 casualties following the explosion. Its Afghanistan Country Director Tejan Panik said in a statement that so far they have received 20 people at the hospital. Among the wounded are 4 women and a child. Unfortunately, 7 people were already dead on arrival. He also described the injuries suffered by survivors, adding that the wounded, some of whom are being assessed for surgery, have suffered lacerations and bruises. Chinese state broadcaster CCTV reported that 2 Chinese nationals were seriously injured in the blast. It also said that a security guard was killed. Taliban officials confirmed that multiple people had died and others were hurt, but said it was initially difficult to provide precise casualty figures due to the condition of the victim and the ongoing investigation. One Taliban official stated that the number of casualties is not yet clear since several bodies are shattered in the investigation that is ongoing. However, he stated that the target was Chinese workers. Interior Ministry spokesperson Abdul Mateen Kani has commented on the incident, saying, according to preliminary reports, several people were killed and injured, but declined to release further details while inquiries continued. The nature of this attack was a classic ISIS suicide bombing. According to reports, a lone suicide bomber detonated an explosive device inside or near the restaurant in the heavily guarded Shahar-e-No district and bustling commercial area with hotels, offices and embassies, considered one of Kabul's safer zones under Taliban control. In fact, based on Khorasan, a Amaq news agency, which has explicitly described it as a suicide operation deliberately targeting Chinese nationals, citing Beijing's growing crimes and economic presence in Afghanistan. This aligns with ICE pattern of hitting foreign-linked soft targets to undermine Taliban security claims and oppose Chinese influence. The Afghan branch of the Islamic State, also known as ISIL or ISIS, later claimed responsibility for the attack. In a statement, the group said that the explosion had been carried out by a suicide bomber. Its media outlet, Amaq news agency, stated that Chinese citizens had been placed on the group's list of targets. Rights groups have long accused Beijing of serious human rights abuses against Uyghurs, a Muslim ethnic minority of about 10 million people living in China's Xinjiang region. China has consistently denied these allegations, accusing Western nations of spreading false information and interfering in its internal affairs. While Afghan authorities did not immediately confirm the method used in the attack, Pakistan's President Asif al-Zardari described the incident as a bomb blast when condemning the violence. The Taliban government has repeatedly stated that it does not allow Afghan territory to be used as a base by terrorist groups. However, attacks claimed by Islamic State have continued since the Taliban took control of the country in August 2021. This attack was not a one-off, but rather follows a pattern of similar suicide bombings targeted Chinese nationals in Afghanistan. Let's take a look at some of these attacks. On December 12, 2022, armed militants stormed the Longan Hotel in central Kabul, a multi-story facility popular with Chinese diplomats, businessmen and travelers. The attackers detonated 2 explosive devices hidden in bags, targeted a Chinese gathering and then used grenades and gunfire on upper floors and against responding Taliban forces, killing at least 3 and injuring 30 others. In another attack, terrorists targeted and killed a Chinese national working at the gold mine in northern Afghanistan's Takhar province via machine gun fire on his vehicle in Katkajer village. The group claimed it was in propaganda, framing it as a retaliation against Chinese crimes in Xinjiang and economic exploitation. But these attacks were not just limited to Afghanistan. In Pakistan, attacks on Chinese nationals have surged in 2018. On 14 July 2021, a suicide bomber targeted a bus carrying Chinese engineers, workers at the Dasu Dam site in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, killing 9 Chinese nationals and 1 Pakistani. Pakistani authorities linked it to TTP affiliates. In another case, on 21st April 2021, TTP carried out a bombing at the hotel in Quetta, apparently aiming to target Chinese ambassador Nong Rong, who was present but unharmed. 5 people were killed in the attack, including security personnel, highlighting Islamist opposition to China-Pakistan ties. Another attack by Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan on Chinese nationals in Pakistan was a suicide blast that killed 5 Chinese nationals and 1 Pakistani in Shangla, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, en route to Dasu project. In fact, these buildings on the pattern of ICE exploiting Uyghur grievances opposing Taliban Chinese ties. But who are the Uyghurs and what is happening to them? Well, they are a predominantly Muslim ethnic minority living in China's Xinjiang region, and for years Beijing has faced global scrutiny over its treatment of them. Human rights groups and Western governments have accused China of running mass detention camps, subjecting Uyghurs to forced labor, strict surveillance, religious restrictions and efforts to erase cultural identity. Allegations that China strongly denies, saying that its policies are aimed at countering extremism and terrorism. This issue has become a powerful symbol in global Islamist propaganda, and the ISIS has repeatedly used the Uyghurs' cause to justify attacks on Chinese interests, framing China as an enemy of Muslim worldwide. So, are Islamist groups turning on China? The answer is selectively and strategically. For groups like ISIS, its affiliates, China has emerged as a convenient high value enemy, not because of ideology alone, but because of symbolism. Beijing's treatment of Uyghur Muslims, its expanding economic footprint across Muslim majority regions, and its open engagement with regimes like the Taliban have made Chinese nationals and assets soft, visible targets. These attacks are not about China replacing the West as a primary foe, but about maximizing global attention, undermining local security claims, and weaponizing Muslim grievances for propaganda. In that sense, China is no longer neutral territory for jihadist groups. It is now firm on the radar. Joining us to take this conversation forward is Major General Sudhakar Ji, geopolitical and strategic defense expert. Thank you, sir, for your time speaking to us on NewsX Deep Dive. I'd like to understand from you, how exactly are you assessing the situation, this blast that has taken place?
Thank you. Good evening, Asabri. I can't thank you enough. This is a very important topic picked up by NewsX and must compliment, because these small dots they tend to get ignored by mainstream media channel. You see, the world order is in a flux. Geopolitical churn dominates. Donald Trump is the supremo. He's calling the shot from Chagos Island, which has been already handed over to India. Now he's planning to revoke that. The threat of Greenland is no longer a threat. He's hell-bent upon capturing it. And willy-nilly, whatever has happened in Venezuela, directly or indirectly, it is actually contributing to isolating China. When you talk about isolation of China, China has very successfully and effectively been able to sinicize its religion, and they have brought to the front one particular culture, and that culture is the culture of nationalism. If you are in China, you have to do the Chinese way. Everything has to be done the Chinese way, and therefore you find lots of radical departure from the traditional practices of Islam. Has gradually they are closed down. The masjids, all these religious institutes are being changed over to welfare establishments, and likewise. And the center of all this repressive activity, as far as the subject per se which you are touching, are the Uyghur Muslims. Uyghur Muslims, like rightly brought out by you, 10 million or so, and there are far and few, and there are no clear indications of Uyghur Muslim, or earlier times they used to be called as ETIM, East Turkestan Islamic Movement. Okay, nowadays they have a new nomenclature called it TIP, that is Turkestan Islamic Party. Turkestan Islamic Party is an extension of the militant or the terrorist organization of ETIM, which represents the Uyghur Muslim. And I don't think, to the best of my research and study, they have any footprint worth its name existing on the soil of China. They may be, but they are being repressed successfully by anti-terrorism activities or counter-terrorism measures which China has adopted. But why ISIS has actually carried out this particular attack in Kabul, in a place which is as safe as what is being reported, and in that also the Uyghur angle is coming up. You see, the broad issues which need to be understood is that as on today, as we are discussing, Pakistan has extended sanctuary and is harboring the ISIS as much as that of Al-Qaeda. And there are very strict elements of the TIP. It shows an indication that they are more aligned towards Al-Qaeda than the ISIS. But there are instances wherein you find that TIP and ISIS have been collaborating to large an extent. And the biggest enemy of Afghanistan's Taliban are the ISIS. So the ISIS, although have got the sanctuary across the border Duran line in Pakistan, but they do infiltrate or they do carry out activity with the help of the helpers or the handlers, controlled by to an extent. I'm not saying ISIS is controlling the ISI is controlling the ISIS is an independent autonomous organization.
Right.
They care damn, and they continue to perpetrate mayhem and activities as violent as has been reported in Kabul. It is basically, there are two messages which are being given. One, China should not actually obliterate or forget about or dismiss the aspirations, the historic aspirations of Uyghur. Number two, they also are threatening Taliban of Afghanistan that they have a say. It is the predominant Islamic or the Sharia law, extension of the Sharia law. Their goal and aim being to extend the Sharia caliphate, that is the global caliphate, which they failed miserably between 2014 to 2019. They have not been, their target
Right.
was to establish a global caliphate after they had been decimated in 2017 in that Syria-Iraq corridor. They have not been able to extend the caliphate, although in a non-contiguous manner. There is a stretch of ISIS Khorasan going right up to New Zealand, also touching Australia, the South Asia and the Southeast Asia, but they are not contiguous to each other. They are broken pieces. Regional caliphates are being created. This is an attempt to revive and rejuvenate the very concept of the caliphate that they have been dreaming and aspiring for, which they announced in public domain, both writing as also vocally, in 2014 time and again in 2019, with the help of Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden.
Okay.
He also promulgated the similar theory, but it has not taken off in earnest. That's all I have to say and share with you at the moment.
Right, sir, absolutely. With that, I'd like to thank you for joining us on NewsX, sharing your perspectives and insights with us on this important story. With that, we slip into a short break. Thanks for watching.